Hey everyone, welcome to Politics and Stuff, and this is Ibrahim Abu Ali. I would like to talk about democracy. Is it important and why? And is democracy the best system? To answer this question, let's explore what we truly desire from the best system of governance. Let's forget that there is something called democracy and let's think of an ideal system. How and what do we want it to be? We want government efficiency, we want high efficiency with low corruption, and we want removable leaders because what if the person or people in power are not efficient and are corrupted? Of course, we will need to change them. So, what system provides us the right to change our political leaders? We want checks and balances because, like the British historian Lord Acton said, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Checks and balances prevent abuse of power. We want governments that are transparent, tolerant, and responsive to the needs of people. We want rule of law, freedom of expression. We want minority rights, and we want human rights, and we want judicial independence. Does any other system provide what democracy provides? And if there is another system that provides all of these things, well, let's abandon democracy and adopt this system. As a matter of fact, democracy is a means to ends like stability, prosperity, economic development, good standards of living, rule of law, freedom, human rights, and poverty reduction. Democracy is a means to have a good governing system. Democracy provides the greatest freedom of choice and expression. With democracy comes the freedom to criticize national leaders, government officials, and government policies. Free speech is integral to democracy. Without free speech, democracy is impaired. Democracy is a system of governance where power is held by people. As Abraham Lincoln said about democracy, that it's government of the people, by the people, for the people. Democracy means that people have a say in important decisions, whether directly or indirectly through representatives they elect. Democracy ensures that the governor caters for the needs of the people. Democracy grants the ability to throw the governor out if he or she is doing a bad job. Well, let's move to what constitutes a democracy. Democracy is more than a vote. Democracy ensures that the person in power cannot aggrandize his or her power and become despotic. Democracy is about distribution of power. So, what comes with democracy? Or let's ask the question another way, what is prerequisite for democracy? We have the institutions of democracy, which are checks and balances, judicial independence, and accountability. Checks and balances. You know that there are different branches of power within a political system. There is the executive power, which is the administration or the government. There is the legislative branch, which the parliament represents. And there is the judicial branch, the courts. Checks and balances represent the regulation of separation of power. The power and boundaries of each branch of the political system are set by the Constitution, and it differs from one system to another and from one country to another. Checks and balances mean checks upon the executive power. And to balance the executive branch power, what are the institutions that exercise checks and balances? We have the parliament, we have the courts, and we have media and civil society. The courts or the judicial branch ensures that the executive branch is acting within the law, and the laws are set by the parliament, the legislative branch. The freedom of speech associated with democracy gives the media and civil society a role to act as a check and balance upon the executive branch and on the whole political system, where politicians and their policies are scrutinized by experts outside the government and outside the parliament. The importance of checks and balances is that they prevent too much power concentrated in only one branch of the political system. Another important feature of democracy or of an efficient political system is judicial independence. The judicial branch must be completely independent, where there is no interference from the legislature or the executive branch. Judicial independence guarantees that the executive and the legislature would not pursue policies or pass laws that would benefit only themselves or benefit only the majority or allied interest groups. In fact, the judiciary cannot perform this role unless it is truly and actually independent. The judicial checks and balances, in addition to its independence, are very significant tools to counter the tyranny of the majority. Now let's move to accountability. Accountability is another important element of democracy. Accountability is of great importance in order to have a good political system. Why is accountability important? First, accountability prevents abuse of power. Accountability acts as a check on those in positions of power, whether they are elected officials, government agencies, or institutions. It ensures that they act within the bounds of the law and in the best interest of the people. When individuals or institutions are held accountable for their actions, it deters them from engaging in corrupt practices or authoritarian behavior. Accountability promotes trust between the government and the citizens. When leaders and institutions are transparent and answerable for their decisions and actions, it instills confidence in the democratic process. It allows citizens to have faith that their concerns and interests will be addressed. When leaders know they will be held accountable for their actions, they are more likely to make informed and thoughtful decisions rather than pursuing short-term gains or personal agendas. Accountability prevents abuse of power because if there is a misuse of power, the person or the party will not get re-elected again. Accountability empowers citizens, gives citizens power by giving them a voice and the ability to influence decision-making processes through mechanisms such as elections, public hearings, and freedom of information. Therefore, citizens can hold their representatives accountable for their promises, actions, and policies and decisions. Accountability empowers individuals to actively participate in shaping their society and holding their government accountable to their needs and aspirations. On the other hand of citizen empowerment, I want to talk about political alienation. There is an intertwined relationship between dictatorship and political alienation. Political alienation is a state where individuals feel estranged and detached from the political system. They feel like they are strangers and not part of a group. Under a dictatorship, individuals experience severe limitations on their political freedom. Basic civil liberties, such as freedom of speech and assembly, do not exist. This creates an atmosphere of fear and oppression, where people perceive themselves as mere pawns in a system where their voices and actions hold no weight. Well, what's the impact of political alienation on the individual's psychological well-being? Political alienation can have profound effect on the individual's psychological well-being. When individuals feel detached from the political process, they may experience a sense of powerlessness, leading to feelings of frustration and cynicism. The belief that their voice and participation do not matter can create a deep sense of despair and hopelessness. Political alienation can also result in a loss of purpose and identity for individuals. Political alienation can also lead to a loss of motivation and engagement in other areas of life as well. It also leads to increased stress and anxiety, in addition to a constant state of worry and uncertainty about the future. And with a constant state of worry and fear, people become afraid of expressing their true opinions. When people engage in political activities, whether it's through voting, advocating for causes, or participating in community dialogues, this can provide the individual with a sense of purpose, meaning, and hope. Under a dictatorship, when people are always fed a one-sided narrative, the individual's ability to have critical thinking and independent judgment diminishes. Political alienation can have several dangers and negative consequences for individuals and society as a whole. Here are some potential dangers associated with political alienation. When political alienation prevails and creeps over society, it creates a systemic state of anomy. The term anomy was introduced by the French sociologist Durkheim, which means a breakdown of social standards and moral values due to lack of purpose and idea. When individuals feel alienated, they are less likely to contribute their insights and opinions to the public discourse. This can result in limiting the range of ideas and innovative solutions to societal challenges. It is essential for a healthy democracy to have a robust exchange of ideas and active participation from all segments of society. Now, I want to talk about democracy and psychology, or as it's called, the psychology of democracy. Democracy has a huge impact on the collective mindset and individual psychology. As Professor Muqaddam, the author of the book The Psychology of Democracy, put it, democracy impacts how a society thinks and acts as individuals develop and take shape within a cultural context. Living in a democratic society involves changing the way we see ourselves and how we see our relationship with others, including political leaders. Furthermore, democracy involves moving away from ethnocentrism, where people tend to view their in-group, ethnicity, nationality as superior to others. So with democracy comes more openness and acceptance toward others. Democracy in itself promotes some behaviors, like tolerance for differences, which emanates from the practice of free speech. Living in a democracy is connected with an increased degree of flexibility of the mental structure. As the mental structure becomes more flexible and more adaptable to a changeable environment. As I mentioned earlier, that democracy empowers the individual and it encourages people to believe that their voices matter and that they have the power to shape their society. Democracy nurtures critical thinking skills and a spirit of inquiry. In a democratic society, individuals are encouraged to question authority, challenge prevailing norms, and engage in informed debates. People actively seek out diverse sources of information, analyze multiple viewpoints, and develop a deeper understanding of complex issues. This fosters a culture of intellectual curiosity, where citizens become active participants in shaping their society. Democracy instills a sense of responsibility and civic duty. Citizens recognize their role and their duty of contributing to the common good and to have a sense of responsibility towards their fellow citizens. This commitment to collective well-being strengthens a social cohesion and nurtures a sense of belonging. Research indicates that individuals living in democratic societies experience higher level of well-being and life satisfaction. And life satisfaction in turn affects the level of productivity of individuals. By and large, democracy empowers individuals, fosters tolerance and acceptance, nurtures critical thinking, promotes adaptability, encourages civic engagement, and enhances overall well-being. Now let's move to problems of democracy. Someone might argue that the majority of voters are ignorant to what makes a good leader, or what constitutes good policies, or that citizens do not have that much knowledge about economy or foreign policy or international relations or other aspects of the political system. That's a very patronizing way of looking at things. In fact, in democracy, there is freedom of information, where I can have access to information of what the government is doing. But in dictatorship, the freedom of information does not exist. So what if the society makes a mistake? What if the society makes a mistake in choosing the wrong leader? Well, societies learn in a heuristic way. And heuristic here means learning by discovering things, or through your own experience rather than being told. It means arriving at solutions by trying different actions to see if they produce the result that is wanted. If we abandon democracy because of voters' ignorance, would it make citizens more knowledgeable of the political and economic issues? As a matter of fact, the alternatives of democracy had been proven to be worse. Another problem of democracy is that leaders are often too busy dealing with political challenges to make grand economic plans. They are frequently voted out of office before they can see the outcome and benefits of their plans, because grand economic plans usually take long time to bear fruits. So in order to win elections Politicians make short-term promises, like cutting taxes while increasing benefits, and that does not always make economic sense in the long run. In democracy, there is the power of institutions, rather than relying only on one person. Institutionalization is a very significant element of democracy. It's a healthy thing to rely on the rule of institutions rather than relying on the rule of solely one person. One of the alternatives to democracy is benevolent dictatorship or benign dictatorship. Benevolent dictatorship means kind and helpful dictatorship. Benevolent dictator is referred to in the Arabic literature as the just dictator. So could it be a good alternative to democracy? As a matter of fact, we will need democratic tools to ensure that it stays benevolent. As I mentioned earlier, the saying of Lord Acton, the British historian, who said, "Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely." Moreover, benevolent dictators are really hard to find. And if found, what about his or her successor? And the thing about benevolent dictatorships or autocracies is that they tend to expire. They either cease to be autocracies or they cease to be benevolent. The big question here is, should we abandon democracy due to its deficits, or should we work to make it better? Democracy might not be perfect, but democracy provides all those things I've mentioned earlier, which no other system provides. There are different types and models of democracy, but they all share the same elements of rule of law, separation of power, accountability, transparency, and the other elements I've mentioned earlier. Every model of democracy has its own problem, but reality shows that the problems of democracy are much lesser than the problems of other systems. Thank you for watching. Please follow the page and subscribe to the YouTube channel.